What is the most Karen thing a Karen has ever done to you personally? Part 1.
Story 1. I worked at McDonald's during the time they switched to Child's fries and discontinued the caramel dip in Happy Meals. Everyone was pretty cool with it, but one country club-looking Karen came in with her daughter and ordered a nugget Happy Meal with 3 cups of caramel dip, because Braylon likes to dip her nuggets in it. I apologized and let her know we discontinued the caramel dip, which resulted in an instant meltdown. Kid threw herself down on the floor in an absolute screaming tantrum, and Karen was screaming at me that we do have caramel dip, and I'm obviously keeping it from her. Then the accusations of me, a 17-year-old, purposely trying to starve her daughter. Honestly, the kid could have benefited from starving a bit. I've ruined her day. She's a regular customer, but she's never coming back. Where's my manager? Typical Karen stuff. Manager eventually came out and just grabbed a sundae cup and filled it with a couple pumps of caramel, and Karen gave me a smug look and flipped me off. Story 2. She was a friend of the family. Invited me to live in her guest room of her house for free when she found out I was living in a motel after a breakup. I was getting a great deal on monthly rates at this motel, and they were letting me store all of my stuff for free on top of that, but free is free. She was very strict on when I could be out in the common areas, when I could use the kitchen or shower, and wouldn't let me park my car in the driveway because she wanted to leave the space in case the girl renting the basement suite bought a car. I wasn't allowed to have friends over at any time. Shortly after I moved in, she also started telling my dad when and what kind of mail I was getting for some reason. After being there for 3 weeks, she told me I needed to start paying rent because it wasn't fair to the other girl living there. The other girl was an actual renter, paying for an actual basement suite with an actual tenancy agreement. I paid her for 1 month, long enough to find something else. I lost the great deal on the off-season motel and ended up getting a dump basement suite elsewhere, but freedom was way better than living there. When I moved out, and I had given her notice I would be, despite not being an actual renter, she told everyone who would listen that I was ungrateful and awful. Thankfully, she was already on thin ice with my family, but geez. Story 3. Doctor here. I used to work in a public night shift service, kinda like an emergency room but for non-emergencies, to keep the hospitals clear of white codes. So anything from a fever to a sore throat, to prescriptions for urgent treatments. And a Karen walks in at 3 a.m. asking for a prescription for hypertension drugs, which isn't unusual, as old people, more often than not. But she looked 55. Sometimes don't notice they're running low. Anyway, the law, not a rule, not my decision, the law, states that this service can only write prescriptions for potentially life-threatening conditions drugs for a maximum of 72 hours coverage. So if you take 1 pill a day, I can only prescribe you a single blister. Here we're not bottles, but blisters. And while I'm writing the prescription, Karen casually mentions that she was insomniac. And while cleaning the medicine cabinet, she realized she was down to her last full blister. My pen stops. I ask her to repeat, full blister. Yeah, so I take the prescription, tear it in half, then again, then I throw it in the bin, explaining to her the law. She gets mad, starts yelling, and threatens to call the cops. Go ahead. Cops came, and she triumphantly announced that I'm refusing to treat her. I explain the situation, and they ask her if it's true that she has a full blister, and she, of course, being a Karen who is always right no matter what, confirms it. The cops look at her, still with a look of triumph, waiting for them to arrest me, then at me, then ask her politely to leave, as I'm in the right. She's livid. The day after, my boss called me and cracked up because she went there during the day to talk to the manager, and she, my boss, told her the exact same thing. Never saw her again there, weirdly enough. Story 4. Worked at a grocery store and a coworker put a 99-cent sticker on my shirt. We were 2 of maybe 5 employees, so we were all good friends and everything is funny. When got a pastime on a ship, so I just left it there. Some woman came through my line and asked me why I had a sticker on my shirt, and I just kinda laughed it off. She asked if I thought it was funny, and I was like, not really, but sorta. She asked if my coworker put it there, to which I responded yes. She told me she was going to speak to the store owner cause it was disrespectful to behave that way at work. She told me to call my manager, and I did, but he was a super cool guy and knew this lady was an idiot. She talked to the store owner and my manager about firing me to no avail. She accomplished nothing and was a fool. The end. Story 5. When I was working retail, this one woman had a big bag of coupons. Most of them were unusable because either they were expired or they were duplicates. She berated me because the system was rejecting most of the coupons. She called me stupid amongst other names. telling me I just wasn't doing it right. Then, as a typical Karen would, she asked to speak with my manager. My manager came and asked what the problem was. The women ranted about how incompetent I was because I didn't know how to scan a coupon. My manager looked at the coupons, and the coupons were the problem, not me. My manager chewed out the customer for being disrespectful to me and told the customer to leave the store. I hated working there, but I'm so grateful that I had managers that totally didn't go by the customer is always right rule and weren't afraid to stand up for their employees. That was just one of many incidents. Story 6. Was at the park with my daughter. She was 3 at the time. Her and a couple other kids started to play together. Then she attempted to use the monkey bars. She's a very adventurous child. About midway through, she fell. I didn't do anything because she's fallen before, and I want her to learn to get back up on her own and not be scared to try again. Anyway, one of the boys was about to get on the monkey bars too, until I heard a woman run toward him screaming to stop. She picked him up and looked at my daughter. Told her it wasn't smart of her to go on the monkey bars if she wasn't fully ready, because then others might get that same idea. That's when I got up and went to my daughter's defense. Sternly told the woman to not speak to her that way, and it's no fault of hers that she wasn't scared to try something new. She took her kid and left. Story 7. Came up to my register and asked for the price of a protein bar. Every item in the store had a physical price tag because we didn't have scanners at the register. I took it from her, flipped it over, and let her know it was $2.49 before tax. She asked me how much the case would be. Normally we did discounts for cases, but they had to be ordered ahead of time. So I started explaining we couldn't do a discount unless. She cut me off aggressively and hissed, I didn't ask for a discount. So I typed in $2.49 multiplied by 12 added tax and told her the final price. She stared me down for a few minutes before asking me to get my manager. Once my manager arrived, she spent literally 10 minutes tearing into me, describing me as the least helpful person ever, talking about my bad attitude, complaining about how awful and rude I was, etc. I was working nearly full-time, 35.5 hours per week, and commuting to a school over an hour away 4 days a week. This lady took the time out of her day to break me down to the point I started crying. Thanks, Karen. I still remember you. Hope you enjoyed your protein bar. Story 8. Asked for my manager's personal cell phone number to complain that I, 7 months pregnant at the time, would not carry a refrigerator that she had not paid for in the cost of her room. Up to her second-story room, we did not have an elevator. Rather than just accept an upgrade for free, because she didn't want to unpack her stuff, she refused to believe we had rooms without fridges, and I was just being fat and lazy. When I refused to give her the cell phone number, she asked for corporate's number. I wrote it down on a sticky note with a smiley face. She came down later and asked to move rooms. I made her pay the difference. Story 9. I used to work retail, so I have come across my fair share of Karens. They were a huge reason why I went back to school and no longer work as a cashier. Anyways, one day while I was manning the registers with a few other coworkers of mine, I had a massive nosebleed right as I was finishing a transaction. I grabbed a tissue and quickly excused myself to run to the restroom so I could try to get it to stop bleeding. This meant that I couldn't say goodbye to Karen and give the little spiel about how I was oh so grateful for her shopping with us. Anyways, after about 10 minutes, I was finally able to get my nose back under control and headed back to the registers. I saw her waiting to the side with a scowl on her face, arms crossed over her chest, the whole 9 yards. She proceeded to scold me about how rude I was for not saying goodbye. After I apologized and explained that I had an unexpected nosebleed, she told me I should have tried holding it in and that the customer comes first. My brain was literally filled with question marks after that. Story 10. I was a supervisor at Cost Plus World Market. A Karen comes in one night pushing a cart full of obviously used throw pillows and asks to return them. Of course, she has no receipt and instead wants us to just look her up in the system. Except she refuses to provide her information for us to try to look her up. She starts yelling at my cashier, and that's when I stepped in to tell her very politely and calmly that she either needs a receipt or needs to provide us her name and phone number. She starts screeching and screaming about how we're idiots and she'll get us fired and blah blah blah. Then she demands an apology from the president of the world. I'm certain she meant the president of World Market, but in her bleached hair fury she said the president of the world, and I barely held it together as I calmly offered her the corporate feedback number. She wouldn't take it and instead walked out of the store still yelling, and without her cart of dirty pillows. She returned about 20 minutes later, quietly apologized, and took her pillows with her. We never heard from her again. Story 11. Working retail one afternoon, and here comes Karen with a return. At first glance, it's no big deal, just coming in to return a shirt. She walks up to the register, hands me the receipt to start processing, and we exchange a pleasant greeting. I take the shirt out of the bag to examine it, and it is beyond disgusting. There were brown sweat stains all over it, from the pits to the stomach to the shoulder. It looked like whoever wore it rolled in mud or some nonsense. I proceed to tell Karen that I cannot return the product because it had clearly been used and that only unused and resellable items could be returned. Karen threw a fit, started screaming at me and accusing me of calling her a liar and whatnot. I hold up the shirt and point to the brown pit stains and say, "Karen, can't you see this stain?" Oh man, did that make it worse. She continues making a huge scene and demands to see the manager. Newsflash, Karen, I'm the manager, and I'm not budging. After 20 or so minutes of complaining, she finally leaves saying she'll be complaining to the corporate and getting me fired and blah blah. Fast forward a few days, a guy walks into the store, finds the first store associate he can, and immediately asks for me by name. Oh, here we go again. Anyway, my associate brought the guy over to where I'm standing, and I politely greeted him. The guy spends the next 10 minutes apologizing for his crazy wife, Karen verbally abusing my staff and I a few days prior. Apparently, the guy went to the beach and did some type of CrossFit training class in the sand. Karen knows all of this. She was at the class with him. The guy ended up not liking the shirt for some reason, and Karen thought she could pull a fast one on us by making a scene. Think again, Karen. Story 12. I met plenty of Karens while working retail, but there's one who stands out. Karen was Indian and had the most entitled attitude of anyone I'd ever met. She was also a regular customer, so we had to deal with her things at least twice a week. Karen's favorite pastime would be to literally fill a trolley with clearance items. These are a nightmare, as you have to reduce the price on the till manually. Management were worried about scanning fraud, and so had disabled a multiplication button on the till. This meant that each item had to be scanned and discounted individually. Once all of her items had been scanned and discounted, Karen would always kick up a fuss over the price, accusing us of overcharging her and demanding to see a manager. Some managers would give in to Karen, which meant voiding the transaction and starting over. If they told Karen to get lost, she'd complain about never shopping here again and storm out, leaving a full trolley of goods to put back. Thanks, Karen. Either way, the entire show would take at least an hour. There was a nice moment of karma for Karen, however. One winter, we had an especially heavy snowstorm. Our policy in this case is to clear the car park access to the spaces closest to the door. We do this as very few people come out when it's snowing, and it lets people park as close as possible. Not Karen, though. Oh no. She pulls into the car park, drives into the uncleared section, and tries to drive through a snowdrift, hitting a covered bollard in the process. She then clomps into the store, demands to see the manager, and proceeds to yell at him point blank. Apparently she was going to sue us and get every employee fired for not clearing her usual parking space of snow. Our manager responded by banning her from our store for being abusive towards staff. Story 13. The mother of a girl I went to school with comes into the shop I work at 5:58 p.m. We close at 6. Lights are half off, front door is closed, roller door is half down, and goes, "Hi, my name. I'm just running in to grab a few things." Before I can tell her not to, she's gone into the aisles. My manager comes over and goes, "What are you doing?" We have to be done by 6. You want to find her? She's already got a basket full of things going, "Where are the capsicums? Can I just grab?" Keep in mind, this is a fruit shop. Half the items come off the shelves and into the cool room. My manager is literally the nicest guy ever and agrees to ring up her items as long as she pays the card, as the cash is all packed into the safe. "No, that's ridiculous. I only have cash." "My name, hon. Can you tell him I only have cash?" So I tell her the exact same thing, that we literally can't access the cash once the safe is closed for the day. "Oh, well, can you just pay for it on your card and I'll get, daughter, to pay you back?" I tell her that I can't do that. She starts shouting about how unprofessional we are, that the shop is awful because half the items are gone, we are closed, and that she's never coming back. Thank God. She avoids me at school events now, and I honestly feel sorry for her daughter. The stories I hear about this cow are shocking. Icing on the cake. Her name is actually Karen. Story 14. For my grade 2 end-of-the-year school party, we went over to a community pool. It was designed for kids, with a lazy river, slide, etc. There were a few kids that had gotten hold of inner tubes, like the style we find at water parks all the time. I wanted one too and found one sitting on the edge of the pool. I grabbed it and started to play with it, as kids do. Some lady comes over and tells me that she had rented it, and that I couldn't play with it. Ogre lady takes the tube and leaves it on the edge of the pool, not even using it, smirks back at me with this crappy face like she beat me in some major contest of wills. Me being raised to respect people that were, at least technically, adults, I say fine, whatever, weird flexed to prove your adulthood by bullying a 7-year-old but weak ending. Moved on with my play. Some swim instructor that had another tube noticed and let me play with one that her class was done using. I say thank you, happy me has a tube now. Another kid in my class immediately bombs over and asks if he can use my newfound tube. I tell him no, I just got it. He shrugs and goes over and takes the ogre lady's tube, which she is not using and has left on the edge of the pool. I keep playing for probably another 2 minutes when the ogre lady comes splashing back. The conversation goes like this. Lady, I told you to stop playing with that tube. Give it back. Me, this isn't your tube. That swim instructor gave it to me and another kid in my class took yours down the lazy. Lady, interrupting and now shouting, I don't believe you. Give it here. Proceeds to yank the tube off my head. Me hate. Lady, puts tube back on the edge of the pool right where the last one was and comes over to me. You're a little thief, and your mother ought to be ashamed of raising a liar. If I see you going near that tube again, I'll have you kicked out of the pool. Goes back to gossiping with the other stereotypical suburban moms. I obviously am terrified and feel awful, because I got yelled at and insulted by a stranger. I don't remember the rest of the day, other than it was pretty miserable after that. The injustice of the whole thing, especially that the other kid who took the tube got off with the whole thing. He often wasn't very nice to me. Still makes me grit my teeth. I'm now a full-grown adult. Story 15. Name changed for safety of idiot manager. When I worked at a grocery store, I had a woman throw a conniption over a coupon. So here's the skinny. The coupon was for half off a bakery cake. Our bakery cake. As in you can walk in the bakery, grab a cake we have made, and buy it. This is what the coupon was for. Well, Karen 5000 went to the frozen food section, got a frozen Sara Lee cake, and wanted to use the coupon on that. Now, I explain how the coupon worked to her, and keep in mind, this was not a tricky coupon. There was no fine print. It wasn't one of those gotcha moments. It was a very clear coupon, in that it was abundantly obvious it could only be used in our bakery. Well, she threw a fit. She hooted and hollered. She demanded I give her the coupon anyway, but there was literally no way for me to do that without the manager overriding because I was a peon. So then she insisted that I get my manager. Works for me. My manager comes up, and to my delight, it's Adam. Now, Adam is useless. He can't figure out how to do crap. I'm not entirely sure how this guy still has a job. So she's screaming at him to give her the discount. But he can't figure it out. It's probably the simplest manager override function he'd need to perform, and he can't do it. So he suggests she buy a bakery cake for the coupon price. She sneers and says, I need a cake that says happy birthday. None of those cakes say happy birthday. What am I supposed to do about that? So I said, buy some icing and write happy birthday yourself. That did it. She left shouting at us that we'd lost a customer. Doubtful, since she had an account at our store and had been shopping there since the Stone Age. I hope that in her darkest moments, when life seems cold and dreary and the world is against her, she thinks of me. She sees my face, and she suffers. Story 16. I worked at a home improvement store for a while in college. I was a cashier in the garden section. This woman pulls up on the curb in a no parking zone. Grabs her fertilizer and soil. After I check out, she goes ballistic that I didn't help load her car and she was going to report me to managers. Due to company policy, I wasn't allowed to. Other employees were though. Her face mole was shaking and everything. Over a bag of soil that weighed under 10 pounds and a handle of fertilizer. Story 17. Tried to return a top to the store I worked at 6 months after it was purchased. When I said there is a time limit on change of mind returns, she knows. She shops there a lot. She tried to tell me that was against the law. When I correctly pointed out that the law referenced faulty items, she tried to tell me her fat ass, not being able to fit into it, was a fault of the garment. When I told her she could try her luck with corporate, she stormed out only to storm back in later to ask for my name to add to her complaint to the ombudsman. I gave her with a smile, 'cause I was right, and moved on with my day. Story 18. My sister-in-law is the biggest Karen I've ever met, complains in almost every restaurant we have gone to. But this one time they were moving house and my bro asked me to help. I was staying at their place for the delivery truck that was to arrive early in the morning. We were having drinks and my bed/mattress was on the living room floor. At around 1:15 I said, "I think I'm going to go to bed." She replied, "Are you kicking me out of my own living room?" Not realizing she is crazy, I joke, "I guess I am." She said no one does that, and even though she had finished her last drink, made herself 2 cups of tea. She didn't go to bed till after 2:30. She told me the next morning she stayed up to show no one tells her what to do. Story 19. When I worked at the Home Depot, a Karen told me that she didn't want any black men to install her flooring. I was in charge of arranging her order and told her that we don't select which individuals exactly will install her floor and that she'll get who she gets. She proceeds to have a fit about it, demands white installers, and asks to speak to my manager. I'm so glad she did, because my manager's name was Dwayne, and he was a real big black dude. Turns out she didn't want to speak to the manager. Story 20. Left her card in the FBOS machine at the McDonald's I was managing as a teenager. Rang me to say I needed to drive it out to her. That I ruined her night, ruined her family's night, owed her free food, and that she'll be laying a formal complaint when I refused all of the above. She showed up 3/4 of an hour later with steam blowing out her ears asking for her card back. Last we heard from her. That's a wrap for this video. Make sure to leave your relatable story down in the comments. I would love to make a video on them. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.